Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much to BookNet Canada for inviting me to do this. I don't get to Canada nearly as often as I would like to. Next time I'd like to come when it's a little bit warmer, but we don't choose these things. So actually, I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with what Goodreads is, but I'm going to really dive into kind of a lot of specifics about it. Sort of where we are, where we're headed, how big we've gotten, what we're specializing in, what people are using the site for, both readers as well as authors and publishers. And actually, just quickly, I had the good fortune of sitting next to Brian O'Leary today, and I saw him do this talk at a conference in San Francisco, and he had this amazing PowerPoint that was like, I don't even know if it was PowerPoint, but it was this amazing presentation. It was all animated, and I was like, I want to do something like that. And I got with the really smart people who work with me, and what we came up with was books on the top and the bottom of the slide. So I know it's kind of visually dazzling, but if you can just kind of try to get past that and soak up some of the info, that'd be good. Let me just make sure I know. So again, I'm Patrick Brown. I'm Community Manager and Director of Publisher and Author Outreach for Goodreads. That encompasses everything from moderating the reviews and comments on the site insofar as they are moderated, helping to grow the community, setting up live author events on Goodreads, working with publishers to make sure that their books are properly represented. If there's errors in the metadata, anything like that, I'm the one to deal with that. And I also do a little bit of kind of quasi-marketing. So Goodreads was founded in December of 2006 by Otis and Elizabeth Chandler. At the time, well, I've got a slide in a second that sort of shows what the genesis of the idea was. We've grown at this point to 12 full-time employees, and we have 2 offices in Santa Monica and San Francisco. And we're independently owned. We're not affiliated with any large players in the online or book selling space, so we're not partially owned by Amazon or Google or anything like that. We have venture backing from a company called True Ventures. And what we are is we're the world's largest community of online readers, certainly, but I would like to argue that we're one of the world's largest community of readers, period. We have 4.7 million book lovers on the site. Collectively, they've added over 150 million books to their shelves. A big portion of the site, a growing portion of the site, is the author program, and we have 18,000 authors who have joined. To give you a little sense of our demographic, we do skew heavily female. 65% of registered users are female, and in terms of traffic, it's a little bit lower than that for traffic. And since I'm in Canada, we have 127,000 Canadian users. If there are marketing people in the audience, I'll talk a little bit about traffic. It's funny because Joel said that we're about the who and not the how many, and I've got like 9 slides about how many. I will get to the who because that is what's important. So let's see. We're doing about 9 million monthly uniques. We're a top 350 site in the US. In terms of traffic, we're comparable to Priceline.com, if you're familiar with them. And we did that without William Shatner. And the way that we generate most of our revenue is selling book launch packages. So that's a kind of hybrid targeting and promotional campaign. We can target by comparable author, we can target by genre, we can do demo targeting, geography, all of that. So what are people doing on Goodreads? I think one of the big things is that they recommend books to each other. So you can explicitly say, hey, I think you'd really like this book for X, Y, and Z reasons. You can recommend that to your friends on the site. You can recommend that to Facebook friends through Goodreads. You can also update your progress in a book. We're doing over 10,000 of these a day. This is kind of like our version of a tweet. It's a status update of sorts, and it says I'm, 285 pages into this book, or if you're reading an ebook, I'm 14% into this book. And we also enable you to be able to comment on where you are and say, it's just starting to get good, or I can't believe that guy was the killer, or whatever. And as you can see, that I think this is going to really take off as ebooks continue to gain market share, because it's a more immediate experience. You're in your app, or you're in a device, or wherever you're reading, and you can immediately just hit a button that says post to Goodreads. People like to take polls. This is a a poll for a specific book, but you can also do a poll for 10 different books and say which one of these is the best, that kind of thing. They like to take quizzes. Again, you can create a book-specific quiz, or you can do a quiz all about an author's work. They like quotes. Quotes are actually huge. I think I have stats on this. I think something like, I want to say like 50,000 quotes are added to Goodreads every day. It's kind of a staggering number. A lot of those are coming straight from the text of a book. Somebody can highlight it and post it to Goodreads. They're not all as profound as this one. And of course, I think what we're most known for is our reviews. Every day we're getting 10,000 plus text reviews written on the site. There are 10 million text reviews. I think that's 10 million reviews with more than 150 characters of text. So rather than just a one sentence, this was great or whatever. And obviously you can comment on that and interact with the review. And then the sort of core metric that we use to measure what's happening on the site is the to-read shelf. So that's the shelf of books that you want to read. It's sort of a wish list. And every day people are adding about 70,000 books to that shelf. And of course, all of your friends' activity ends up in your feed, same as it would on Facebook, a very similar sort of thing. So all of your Goodreads activity is going to be curated based on your social graph and your social context. Sorry. So this is actually the genesis of what Goodreads was about. Our founder, Otis Chandler, was at a friend's house and he was looking at his bookshelf and he was like, what about this book? Did you read this? Am I going to like this? Should I get this? And his friend was telling him about it. And it occurred to him that he said, this is where I turn when I'm looking for a book to read. I want to know what my friends thought of it. So, his friends were spread out all over the world, and he said it would be great if I could see all of their bookshelves and ask them about all the books on there, and that they could recommend books to me. So that's what he built, basically. And this is actually a shelf in my apartment and a portion of my bookshelf. And whenever you're looking at a book record, whenever you're looking at a group on Goodreads, anything like that, it's always going to be filtered with your friends' stuff first. So you're going to see your friends' reviews, you're going to see if your friends are in this group, you're going to see which of your friends has added that book. So it's all very much based around, your specific social environment. This is a typical author profile. This is Janet Fitch, author of White Oleander. And I think she's a great sort of example of a Goodreads author who's doing a lot of things well on the site. You can see that if you're familiar with a profile on any basic social networking site, this one is for an author, so it's got an author bio. She has her blog, which she actually writes on I think it's a WordPress blog, and then syncs it to her Goodreads profile. Down here we have her books that she's written, and then over here you can see that she actually reads and reviews books on the site, which I think is terrific, and not enough authors are doing that. And we actually offer authors two different relationships, a friend relationship and a fan relationship. So on Facebook, you can have a personal profile and be friends with people, or you can have a fan page, or whatever they're calling it now, a like page. And we kind of combine those two things into one, so that the Goodreads author, once they've joined the site and claimed their profile, they basically have all of their activity in one place. And you can see that she's written some pretty great reviews. She's rated some books, and she actually voices really honest opinions on these books. She's not just giving all of her friends 5 stars. And I think this is very, very undervalued at the moment, that authors are readers too. They're probably some of the best readers out there. So the more that authors can use the site as a reader and review books and express an opinion about that, the better off they're going to be. So far I've been talking about Goodreads as sort of one large community, which it is. I think all of our members would identify as a Goodreads member, but we also have a lot of sort of micro communities within the site, which most of them take the form of groups. So we've got 40,000 groups that are on Goodreads. Not all of them are active, obviously, because a group like the 2010 Reading Challenge, for instance, that group is obviously over. 2010 has come and gone. So, but we are getting 33,000 discussion topics created each day. And the largest group has almost 8,000 members. Let's talk about some of the more sort of typical ways of using the site. This is a group that's basically the online outpost for a book club that meets in the real world. So this is actually my coworker's book club. And she's got, I think there's 5 people in this club. And they have a Goodreads page where they sort of note what they're reading now, what they would like to read. They create polls to decide what they're going to read next, because that's a sort of big challenge for a lot of book clubs. And they use that to coordinate meetings, but all of their discussion actually happens offline. This is the Next Best Book Club, which probably some of the people in this room may be familiar with. I think this is the largest organized book club maybe in the world. It's got almost 8,000 people. It has now, from Goodreads, expanded out to have its own blog, its own Twitter feed, its own Facebook page, even t-shirts. So they've got 7,700 something people. They read, I think, 2 books a month. They do author chats. They have discussions on just about every topic you could think of. And actually, Goodreads is sort of a home now to it's the discussion home for a lot of sites that are elsewhere on the net. Sword and Laser is a popular blog and podcast about sci-fi and fantasy that's hosted by Veronica Belmont, the tech reporter. And they have a fully formed website with a blog. You can comment on it. But they still have a discussion board on Goodreads. They have a group. They have 2,200 people. They basically just run it as a book club. They choose a couple books each month, and they discuss them there. ModCloth is the online retailer for fashion. And they have a book blog specifically that's a ModCloth. I think it's called Shelf Life or something like that. But they also have a really active Goodreads group with over 1,000 members. And the discussion is not about ModCloth, it's not about fashion, it's about books. Clearly they felt like that was beneficial to their brand, that there was a strong corollary between the kind of people who are buying the sort of vintage or fashion-forward stuff on ModCloth and the readers on Goodreads. There's a couple of publisher groups here. Grey Wolf has a group on Goodreads, and I'll talk about them in a second. And then you can see I grabbed the logo for the Salt Lake County Library. I have no idea how many library and school groups are on Goodreads. I want to say over 10,000 of the groups are associated with either a library or a school. So there's a lot of, some of them are using that to sort of curate their summer reading program. Other people are using it just straight as a discussion board. Challenge groups are actually becoming increasingly popular. These are groups where you can get together with some other people and say, I think that we should all read, every book that Charles Dickens wrote, or in this case, I pulled this because it's Canada specific. So they want to read sort of classics of Canadian literature. So they set a goal for themselves, and the group there, I think, functions as a kind of support system that people keep going. If they run into a book that they don't like that much, they kind of keep going because the group is there as a kind of positive peer pressure. And this is an example of what we call a featured author group. So this is one of the best author interaction tools that we offer on the site. This group is actually for Eric Ripert, any Top Chef fans in the crowd. Eric, so I think it's an interesting group because he's not primarily known as an author. He's a chef, he's a television personality, and he also has cookbooks. But he really wanted to have a place where he could focus specifically on his book and talk about that a little bit. So he made a welcome video for this group, and then he took a week, and every day he would answer questions on a different topic. So one day it would be specifically the book, one day it would be specifically his new TV show or Top Chef. He talked a lot about his restaurant in New York and what it's like to work there. And this was really popular, and I think that cooking is actually one of those things that the online world has really supported cooking in an interesting way. And I think Goodreads that's not the kind of book that most people think of immediately when they think of Goodreads, but there is a community of cookbook lovers and people who love to talk about food. So these are just a couple of the more successful author groups that we've done. Margaret Atwood was a great group for us. We had 750 plus people in that group, and she was thrilled with it. I know that she's been a big supporter of ours since then, so that was a special group for us. Cassandra Clare, the YA author, is the largest group we've ever had for an author. I want to say that it had almost 1,200 people. The way that these groups work is the author makes themselves available for a set period of time, like 5 days, and they say, I'll answer questions on whatever for 5 days. And it's very free form. We then can look at anyone who's added their books to their shelves and rated them 3 stars or higher, and we can send out an invitation saying, hey, we noticed that you read a book by Cassandra Clare. She's on the site. She's answering questions from readers. And the response from those is incredible. I get these, because the messages look like they come from me, even though they're generated automatically. And I get these responses that are like, oh my God, literally, oh my God, OMG. Alexander McCall Smith had a group, I think about 500 people in that group. Paulo Coelho was one of the early adopters for Goodreads. He did a group back in, I want to say, I don't even know if the dates are there, late 2008 maybe. And he had 900 plus people in that group. And it went on for months. He was crazy. He didn't set really a time limit on it. Jennifer Weiner, Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll, another YA group. YA is definitely a strong category for us. We have a lot of active YA readers, and it's not so much that the site skews teen heavy, but it's more that people are reading YA now well into their 30s and 40s. So. Adam Hazlitt, just to show you that it's not all kid stuff and commercial stuff. Garth Stein and James Patterson, who I think is still the best-selling author in the world. So he did a group, and probably about 600 people were in that group. So the question is really, if you're approaching what we're doing on the site, what can you do to kind of tap into the site, build a little community, or access a community that's already there? So I thought I would sort of break this into 3 parts: where and when to start, how to gather that crowd, and how to measure whether what you're doing is doing anything or not, how to measure the results. So we'll start with where and when to start. I'm a big fan of low-hanging fruit, and I think you should go where people are already discussing your work. So this is a screenshot of, this is Rick Riordan's blog as it appears on Goodreads. And you can see that he has 11 likes and 17 comments, and he's got about 5,000 fans. And the reason I pulled this is that Rick Riordan isn't on Goodreads. So these people are choosing to interact with Rick Riordan on Goodreads, even though he's not there at the moment to interact back. So they could easily go to his website to read his blog and comment on it, but they're not. They're doing it here. So if Rick Riordan wants to join Goodreads, if he happens to ever see this presentation, he's got basically a community ready to walk into. He has people who are there waiting to interact with him, who are already interacting with him, and all he's got to do is kind of show up. Again, I'm also a fan of not doing more work than you have to. So this is a Facebook page for the author Jennifer Crucy. And this is the Goodreads tab for her Facebook page. So this displays all of her books, their average ratings, the reviews, quotes from her, polls. Any Goodreads author can add this pretty easily. It's one button, one click. And if you're already on Facebook and you've already got a Facebook page and you think that that's working really well for you, this is a great way to add some content to that and make it really book specific. Because I think that's the big challenge with Facebook, is that people are there to do a lot of different things, and getting them to focus on what you want to talk about is a challenge. So this is my plea to start early when you're thinking about when you want to start building these communities. This is a screenshot of, it's actually 2 giveaways, and giveaways are enormously popular. I'll talk about how popular in a second. But this is the sort of way that I think of, I tend to think of giveaways as an introduction. You're basically saying, let me show you this author that I love or this book that I think is great. And I'll do it for free, so you don't have to take any risk. This is the sort of point of entry for a lot of what happens on Goodreads. People are eager to get these books. They tend to review them. And it tends to be the starting point for a relationship with the author, less so with the publisher. But what you can see here is that this is a giveaway campaign they did for this book, Madame Tussaud. This was a Crown title. They started this giveaway in December for a launch date in February, and I actually think they could have gone another month earlier than that. I think that you're probably sending out galleys to reviewers, to bloggers, to sort of professional readers, booksellers, librarians, people like that. I think it's time to start kind of forgetting about that distinction between a professional reader and the average reader, because what we're finding is that that line is really blurred. A lot of those professional readers are on Goodreads, and a lot of the people that you would think of as a sort of casual reader are also writing a blog. So it's time to start getting those books to the average reader earlier and earlier, I think. But they actually did a second giveaway, and what I think is fascinating about this is that their first giveaway, they gave away 130 copies, and they got, 1,800 people to enter. The second one, which they did right around launch, they only did 24 copies, and they got more people to enter. So the key is not how many books you're giving away, it's really the timing, and the timing is really is the main factor. Obviously, as this book got closer to launch, word of mouth was starting elsewhere. They may have already been running ad campaigns for this book, so the awareness of this book was higher, so more people were interested. This is not a talk about publisher branding, so I'm not going to belabor this point. This is a kind of terrifying, probably not surprising poll that we took on Goodreads. So we essentially asked people a question: when you're choosing a book, do you think about the publisher? And the answer was no, basically. There are some exceptions to that, I think. People noted publishers that they particularly enjoyed. I think in certain genres, there's a heavy association with the publisher. But what I found on Goodreads is that the connection is with the author, and the connection at sometimes is actually at the title level more than it is with the publisher. But again, that hasn't stopped some publishers from trying to sort of carve out a little community for themselves as an imprint on Goodreads. Grey Wolf has done an interesting job. They use it as a kind of sounding board where you can talk about Grey Wolf books, obviously, but you can also sort of tell them how they're doing. And I think Grey Wolf is a smaller, a Grey Wolf book, you probably have some idea of what kind of book that is, so I think it can work for them. I think if you're a larger publisher, it's going to be a lot harder. And I just pulled a couple of examples of some publisher branding. This is Harper Perennial's Facebook page. I'm not picking on Harper Perennial. I think they actually do an awesome job. But what you see here is that they have, 5,000 people have liked them, which is not a ton, but they don't really have any interaction. There's not a whole lot happening here. A couple people have liked a few of their posts, but there's no dialogue for sure. And I think that's where they're kind of missing the boat on that. And the same here with Twitter. They're using it as a broadcast medium. They're getting their content out there for sure, but they're not. I don't really see people I don't see brands at least making a strong connection. But they're probably doing a better job of it on Twitter and Facebook than on Goodreads. So just to summarize that, I think focus on where your readers are already talking about your books and start as early as you can. So now I'm going to talk about the part that people are probably most interested in, how to gather a crowd. And this is easily the least surprising slide in the deck. People do enjoy free stuff. So every day, 22,000 people enter giveaways on Goodreads. They do this because it's still a real thrill to get a free book, especially a free book before it's been published. If you don't work in the book business, that's an amazing thing. And we're seeing an increasing number of people who want that book early. They want to feel like they're a tastemaker. They want to feel like they're ahead of the curve. And in exchange, they're happy to write a review of that book. They're happy to post that review to Twitter, Facebook, their blog, etc. So a lot of times when you give away a book on Goodreads, you will get sort of interaction across the web on that. And I'll talk a little bit about statistics in a moment, but this is our sort of basic the way that we measure what's happening for a book on Goodreads. What you're looking at is the number of people who added this book to their to-read shelf. And we can see that for this specific title, around the release date, there was a little bit of activity, but the giveaway is really what triggered the sort of awareness that people were looking for, that they were adding that book, they had that book on their to-read list. So even if they didn't win the book, they're still indicating that we like to think that this indicates an intent to purchase that book, that eventually they're going to get that book and read it. And I think if you're looking to make an introduction and you're looking to say, get people interested in a title, use the book and use the actual text of the book. I mean, that's a great thing about the web as a whole, is that the immediacy of it. Mitch talked about being able to buy a book at a stoplight, you know, if you're trying to sell a book, you're trying to sell someone on a story, give them that, you know, a portion of that story. This is a screenshot of our iPhone app, which we're doing. I think 77,000 people have downloaded the iPhone app, and the amazing thing about the iPhone app is that people spend half an hour in it. So when they open that app, they're exploring a ton of stuff. They're looking at book titles, but another thing that they're doing is they're reading excerpts of ebooks. So we can, this is actually, I pulled this too because the top of this book page is actually a screenshot of an advertisement. So in this case, they were using an ad to drive people to the first chapter of this book. This was that same book, Madame Tussauds. And we see that this converts at a higher rate than just about any other ad unit that we run. And I think it's because read now is a very powerful call to action. It's a lot better than the potential to win something. You're saying, you know, right now you can sit down and you can read this book. So this is sort of a shot of the statistics for the entire Madame Tussauds campaign. So their first giveaway, they got some activity from that. Then they backed that up with a second giveaway, an ebook excerpt, an ad placement. They did some ads on the site, and they also did some advertising in the iPhone app, obviously. And what happened with that is that all of that activity that you see there, all of that activity led to a newsletter placement for this book. So everything that we do on the site from an editorial standpoint, our newsletter is now read by about 4 million people, which is a larger circulation than quite a few magazines have. And one of basically the main way that we choose what we're going to feature in that newsletter is based on activity in the site. So even if we're looking at a debut author and we're looking at 2 debut authors, and one of them has, you know, 300 people have added the book to their to-read shelf, and the other one has 2 people have added it, we think that the Goodreads community is going to be more likely to be interested in the one that 300 people have added. So that's the one we're probably going to feature. So if you think of it as the earlier you start kind of priming the pump on Goodreads, the more results you're going to get, both in terms of actual interaction on the site, but also in terms of the likelihood of an editorial placement. Another good thing to consider is that interaction trumps kind of static content every time. This is a sort of case study that we had kind of recently. We ran a newsletter interview with Kristen Hanna. So obviously tons of people read that interview. I would like to say that at least 1 million people actually looked at that interview. But only, I think, 17 people bothered to like it, and 1 person left a comment on it. So they consumed it, but they maybe didn't do anything with it. And you know, if you think of it as the more things you can get people to do with your content, I think that you know, the better off you're going to be, because it's going to end up in people's feeds. They're going to see it. It just makes it much more discoverable. So about a week after that, she ran a group. And the group got 180 members and hundreds of, like 500, 600, 700 comments. So the level of interaction obviously went up. And I think that, I'll show you in a second, that the actual level of engagement with the book went up in terms of how many people added it to their shelf. So you don't have to take my word for this. These are some screenshots. Goodreads users love talking to authors. I think that that's one of the reasons that a lot of people join the site, is that they're going to have access to, you know, people that they might, you know, they may live in an area where they don't get to go to a lot of author events. We provide a kind of a place where they can experience almost like a bookstore event online. And these are just some screenshots of people who are excited about talking to authors. This one I think is James Patterson. They call him Mr. Patterson out of respect. And then this is a screenshot of someone who is breathless, literally breathless, that Adam Hazlitt answered his question. So Goodreads, where Adam Hazlitt is a rock star. But you don't even have to take their word for it. We have stats to show you that not only is interactivity better than a sort of a static piece of content, but in this case, it was twice as good. So basically what we saw is I think about 150 people added the book to their to-read shelf when we ran the newsletter interview, and about double that added it when we invited them to the group. Now, obviously, the group came after the newsletter interview, so it's possible that the newsletter interview kind of built some momentum that went into the group. But I would like to think that because people realized they were actually going to be able to talk to Kristen Hanna and ask her questions and have her answer them, that they were much more likely to say, oh, okay, I need to check out her book now. So, and as I said before, if you can imagine a sort of the Q&A portion of a bookstore event when a person is done reading and they're going to take questions from the crowd, that's what we try to replicate in all of these. This is a screenshot of a video chat we did with Julie Clam. And we've been doing these, we did one with Gary Vaynerchuk on Monday, I think. And I don't know if you're familiar with Gary, but he can draw a crowd on his own. And at what point he stopped with the video chat and did some push-ups for a while, which was pretty awesome. But that was extremely successful. I think we had 500, 600 people in that chat. So, and the reason I pulled Julie is that I think she's really terrific just at talking to people online and introducing herself in a way that's not spammy or offensive. And this is her Twitter feed, and what do you notice about it? It's totally full of @replies. All she does is talk with people. She's not, yeah, sure, of course she links to her book, she talks about her book, but she's using Twitter. I think Twitter is terrific for sharing content. It's also terrific for sort of having a little casual conversation. So on Goodreads, she has a sort of more in-depth, focused conversation about her book. On Twitter, she's just kind of talking to people. Facebook is the largest photo sharing site in the world, right? I mean, I think that huge number of page views for them come from photo views. So what's her Facebook feed? It's photos of cute dogs, which is always a good social media strategy to use cute animals whenever possible. Her book is actually about dogs, so that's why I bring that up. And then on Goodreads, she reviews books. And again, I think that's, if you're an author and you're a reader and you love books, why not talk about them online? I know that people are afraid about stepping on someone's toes, offending a fellow author, and I get that, I do, but I think that what you can get out of that, and it's not like you're not reading, it's not like you're not already forming these opinions, share those. I mean, you can decide, hey, I'm not going to share when I didn't like a book. I'm only going to talk about books that I really liked. Even that is strong. Even that has a lot of appeal and can really deepen a connection with the people who are following you on a site like Goodreads. So again, I would recommend introducing people to your work with free stuff as much as you possibly can and getting that free stuff to them in a variety of ways. Giveaways are probably the best way on Goodreads. And interacting with the author is always preferable to just seeing a video or reading an interview. So the question is, if you're doing this and you're sort of building your community, you're sending out these free books into the ether, what are you getting out of it, and how are you actually measuring what that means? I know that I've seen some studies that value Facebook likes. They slap a dollar amount on that. I don't know. I'm not totally a believer in that yet, but I have yet to see one that really shows what it would relate to in terms of the number of books sold to get someone to like you on Facebook. Obviously, it's a great connection, and you can then sort of syndicate your content to them. But this is books added stats again for Kristen Hanna's book. And we think that this indicates a very strong purchase intent. We also have the numbers that show that people convert to read to read quite often on Goodreads. So, but what I think is really interesting about our stats is that they don't just reflect activity on Goodreads. This is the stats for the book Last Night in Montreal by Emily St. John Mandel, Canadian author. And she got a mention on the NPR show Morning Edition for her book. Her book had been out for over a year. And you could see that it had it was pretty stagnant on Goodreads. A few people would add it each day. After she got that mention, she got this huge spike in activity. So, you're getting a mention out there in the media, you're getting a great review in a newspaper. You can probably see that reflected in the stats on Goodreads. This is Daniel Okrent's book, Last Call. He made an appearance on The Daily Show on July 7th, and you can see that had also a pretty sizable impact on the number of people who decided they wanted to read his book. So, what we can tell from this is that Jon Stewart can really sell books, and also that we can see those sales reflected in our statistics. We've also added a friends of added stat, which basically shows, okay, so if you got 200 people to add your book, how many friends do they have? What's the sort of potential virality? I'm going to try to avoid using as many buzzwords as I can, but virality, discoverability. This is what it's all about. Is you want to, if you want to put your book in front of people, you want to do it in a way that makes a difference that my friend is the one who's saying, I want to read this book, rather than just seeing an ad for it or just seeing the sort of book in the general. If I walk into a bookstore, yeah, I can see it, but. So again, I think to-read stats tend to show purchase intent, and we have statistics now that really reflect both online and offline promotion. This is why I sort of think that you should think about getting your books out to the general reader as soon as you can. This is not a professional reader, exactly, but she writes a blog. So she won a book in a Goodreads giveaway. She wrote a review of that book, and then she posted that review to her blog. And this is pretty typical activity. We give people hooks to push their content wherever it is that they want to push it. So they can share it on Twitter, they can share it on Facebook, they can post it to their blog. And she's actually all about Goodreads here, because she has our 2011 reading challenge widget. Like Mitch was talking about how he tries to read 52 books. So we set up something this year where you could say, I want to read 50 books this year, or 52 books. And we'll track your progress, and we'll show which books you read, and your friends can comment on that, and you can have a little conversation about where you are. And the fact that I'm stalled out at 5 books now is kind of pathetic. So, but it's because I'm working on Infinite Jest, all right? But she also has our book montage widget. So it's she's showing what she's read in the past, she's showing what she's currently reading, she's got her goals there, she's posting her content. And a recent poll showed that about 20% of our users are also writing a book blog. So you're tending to get both coverage on Goodreads as well as off Goodreads when you do something there. And again, this is just every time you do anything on Goodreads, if you want them, there are hooks to push things to Facebook, Twitter, blogs, and elsewhere. This is another shot of Emily, and this is, I thought, a really interesting perspective that I never thought of. Basically, she was complaining that she got a negative, both of her books have gotten bad reviews from Publishers Weekly. I'm a fan of her books, so I think Publishers Weekly was wrong in this case. But she was saying it becomes kind of a drag because you realize that all of a sudden that review is going to be on Amazon and Powell's and BarnesandNoble.com and everywhere else where people are looking to buy her book. But she adds that you can now convince most of these people to add some consumer reviews, which is exactly what we've done. So a big part of our sort of, the way that we're hoping to sort of increase our brand recognition is to get our reviews out there to as many places as we can. And we think that they're really high quality reviews. We offer a number of ways to filter those reviews. And right now we're currently syndicating to Google Books, Powell's, Bleo, the Sony Reader Store, and a bunch of other places. So this is kind of just, I think that the big problem in books is always going to be discoverability. How do you find that next great book that you want to read? This is a screenshot of what it looks like when you enter the LA Indie Book Soup. And the first thought that I have is, man, it's a lot of books. And this isn't even a huge store. If you walk into that flagship Indigo store, it's insane. You can't, so sorting that information is a big challenge. And right now, Physical Bookstore does a great job of that. They put interesting books in front of you when you walk in. They have the books curated by section. They have staff picks, and that's valuable. But as we move into a world where we have fewer physical outlets for books and where we have fewer physical books in general, and we lose the sort of discoverability of seeing a book out in the wild, I think it's increasingly important that we find some way to replace that. So this is kind of what we would like the sort of bookstore of the future to be. We have an iPhone app. It has a barcode scanner. You can walk into a bookstore, you can take a scan of the barcode, and rather than just pull up book metadata, reviews from PW, you're going to see your friends' reviews. And I think that those are the most valuable sort of reviews that we have. So this is kind of a where we're headed slide. We're going to continue to focus on sort of cracking the nut of book discoverability. We've recently purchased a company called Discovereads that some of you probably read about in the press. They specialize in Netflix-level complex algorithmic recommendations for books. So they take the sort of history of what you've read and they generate that into what you might like to read next, which we think is going to be a valuable thing. I still feel that, you know, your friends and your social circle is the best way to find out what you're going to read, but not everyone has a social circle that is full of big readers, so this can be a very beneficial thing. We're going to continue to focus on providing great tools for people not only to discuss books, but also for authors and publishers to reach the people who are most likely to like their books. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I think I maybe have 1 minute or 2 minutes before coffee. So if anybody has a question, I can answer it here, or you can find me out near the coffee. I'm happy to talk there. And you know, if you're shy and you don't want to talk in person, you can always just send me an email too. So thank you guys for coming. Cool. Thanks a lot.